Alex Chen pressed his face against the observation deck window, watching the strange purple nebula swirl in the distance. His parents had brought him to Omega-7 Station for their research project, and while most 12-year-olds would complain about spending summer vacation on a boring space station, Alex found it fascinating. The station housed traders, scientists, and travelers from dozens of different alien species. "Alex, come help me with Rascal," his mother, Dr. Priya Sharma, called from the lab. She was one of the few xenobiologists brave enough to study Earth's most dangerous predators in space environments. Today she was running tests on their latest subject, a honey badger that had been genetically enhanced for intelligence and aggression studies. Alex walked into the lab where Rascal sat in his reinforced habitat. The honey badger looked up at the boy with bright, intelligent eyes. Most people thought honey badgers were cute, fluffy creatures. They were wrong. Rascal was 30 pounds of pure fearlessness wrapped in fur and claws. The genetic enhancements had made him even smarter than normal honey badgers, which was terrifying since regular honey badgers already fought lions and won. "He likes you," Priya said, watching Rascal's calm behavior around her son. "That's unusual. Honey badgers don't typically bond with humans this way." Alex smiled and carefully offered Rascal a piece of fruit through the feeding slot. The honey badger took it gently, never taking his eyes off the boy. There was something almost protective in that gaze. The station's peaceful atmosphere shattered when alarms began blaring. Red warning lights flashed as Captain Ross's voice echoed through the communication system. "All civilians to emergency shelters immediately. We have incoming hostile ships. This is not a drill." Through the lab's viewport, Alex could see sleek, dark vessels approaching the station. They moved with predatory grace, their hulls adorned with the crimson markings of the Drakari Empire. The Drakari were known throughout the galaxy for their brutal expansion tactics and their belief that might made right. "Alex, we need to get to the shelter," Priya said, grabbing her emergency kit. But before they could move, the station shuddered under weapons fire. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by dim emergency lighting. "Mom, what about Rascal?" Alex asked, looking back at the honey badger who was now standing alert in his habitat, sensing danger. Priya hesitated for a moment, then made a decision that would change everything. "Grab his travel carrier. We can't leave him here." Alex quickly opened the habitat and coaxed Rascal into the reinforced travel carrier designed for dangerous specimens. The honey badger went willingly, trusting the boy completely. As they headed for the corridor, explosions rocked the station. Smoke filled the air and debris rained from the ceiling. The main corridor was chaos. Aliens of various species ran in panic while station security tried to maintain order. Captain Ross, a grizzled human veteran, was coordinating the defense with his mixed-species security team. "Dr. Sharma, get your son to Shelter Bay 3, Ross shouted over the noise. "We're holding them off, but barely. They never made it to the shelter." A section of the corridor exploded inward as Drakari soldiers blasted through the station's hull. The reptilian warriors were 7 feet tall with armored scales and glowing yellow eyes. They moved with military precision, stunning fleeing civilians with energy weapons. Alex found himself separated from his mother in the confusion. A Drakari soldier spotted him and raised his weapon. The boy clutched Rascal's carrier and tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The stunning beam hit him, and everything went dark. When Alex woke up, he was on a Drakari ship. The cell was small and dimly lit, with smooth metal walls and a single bench. The air smelled of ozone and something reptilian. Rascal's carrier sat beside him, and Alex was relieved to see the honey badger was awake and alert. "You okay, buddy?" Alex whispered, checking the carrier's life support systems. Rascal looked at him and made a soft, chittering sound. Honey badger language for "I'm fine, but someone's going to pay for this." Other prisoners were in nearby cells. Alex could hear crying and worried voices speaking in various alien languages. Through a small viewport, he could see they were already moving through hyperspace, leaving the station far behind. A Drakari guard approached the cell, his yellow eyes studying Alex with curiosity. "Small human cub," the alien said in accented standard galactic. "Your species makes much noise over such tiny things. You will be useful for negotiations, and where's my mother?" Alex demanded, surprised by how steady his own voice sounded. The guard laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Safe for now. Your people will pay well for your return. Humans are known for their foolish attachment to offspring." The guard moved on, dismissing Alex as harmless. This was the Drakari's first mistake. They saw a human child with a pet and assumed both were helpless. They had no understanding of human protective instincts or the bond between a boy and his honey badger. Alex sat quietly, listening to the ship's sounds and mentally mapping its layout. His parents had taught him to be observant, to notice details that others missed. The guard rotations, the ship's routine, the placement of security cameras. Alex began filing it all away. Beside him, Rascal watched everything with those intelligent eyes. The honey badger's enhanced genetics had given him abilities far beyond his natural cousins. He could sense the fear and aggression of the other prisoners, smell the complex chemical signatures of different alien species, and most importantly, he could feel Alex's determination. The Drakari thought they had captured a helpless human child and his pet. They had no idea they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Somewhere in human space, people were already learning about the attack on Omega-7. And when humans discovered that aliens had taken one of their children, the galaxy was about to learn why Earth was home to the most dangerous predators in known space. Alex looked at Rascal and whispered, "Don't worry, buddy. They have no idea what they've done. But they're going to find out." The honey badger chittered softly in response. In honey badger terms, it meant let them come. The Drakari prison ship subjugator cut through hyperspace like a knife through silk. In the command center, Commander Velneth studied the reports from the Omega-7 raid with satisfaction. The attack had been perfect, minimal losses, maximum prisoners, and most importantly, they had captured several humans, including a juvenile. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from human space. They're demanding the return of their prisoners." Velneth's scaled lips curved in what passed for a smile among his species. "Let them demand. We hold their young. Humans are emotional creatures who value their offspring above logic. They will negotiate." In the prison hold, Alex had spent 3 days learning everything he could about the ship. The guards followed predictable patterns. The security cameras had blind spots. The ventilation system connected every section of the vessel. Most importantly, the Drakari treated him like he was harmless. They had put him in a cell with 3 other prisoners, peaceful Zenthari merchants who had been traveling on the station. The Zenthari looked like tall, thin mammals with soft gray fur and large, gentle eyes. They spoke in whispers and seemed terrified of their captors. "Young human," one of the Zenthari said softly, "you should not anger the Drakari. They are cruel to those who resist." Alex was sitting cross-legged on the floor, quietly observing a loose panel in the wall. "I'm not planning to anger them," he said. "I'm planning something else." Rascal's carrier sat nearby, and the honey badger was watching the guards with intense focus. The Drakari had decided the pet was harmless and allowed Alex to keep him for emotional comfort. They thought honey badgers were like the gentle companion animals of other species. "Your pet seems restless," another Zenthari observed, noticing how Rascal paced in his carrier. "He's not my pet," Alex said quietly. "He's my partner, and he's getting ready." The Zenthari didn't understand, but they could sense something different about the human child. While other prisoners cowered or wept, Alex remained calm and watchful. There was an intelligence in his young eyes that reminded them of predators from their homeworld. Meanwhile, in human space, Admiral Kate Morrison stood before the Emergency Council of the Human Defense Alliance. The holographic displays showed the subjugators' projected course toward Drakari space. "They have 12 of our people," Admiral Morrison reported, including Dr. Priya Sharma and her 12-year-old son Alex. The council chamber fell silent. Taking human adults was one thing. It happened in border conflicts and could be handled through traditional military or diplomatic channels. But taking a human child crossed a line that most species in the galaxy didn't even know existed. "What do we know about the boy?" asked General Torres, head of special operations, son of 2 xenobiologists. "High intelligence scores, has been living on frontier stations most of his life, and according to his mother's research notes, he's been working closely with an enhanced honey badger specimen." Several council members exchanged glances. Enhanced honey badger meant genetic modifications for increased intelligence and aggression. Regular honey badgers were already considered among Earth's most fearless predators. "Admiral," General Torres said quietly, "I recommend we activate Ghost Protocol." Ghost Protocol was humanity's most classified military operation. It had never been used before, created specifically for one scenario: the rescue of human children from hostile aliens. Back on the subjugator, Alex had made friends with the ship's ventilation system. The ducts were large enough for a small human to crawl through, and more importantly, large enough for a honey badger to hunt through. He had been carefully mapping the ship's layout, identifying key systems and guard positions. "Little human," a Drakari guard said, approaching the cell. "Your people are sending messages. They want to talk." "Good," Alex said simply. The guard studied him with those yellow reptilian eyes. "You are not afraid like the others. Why?" Alex looked up at the 7-foot alien warrior and smiled. It was not the smile of a scared child. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "Because you don't understand what you've done," Alex said. "You think you caught a human cub and his pet, but you actually cornered a human child and his honey badger. There's a big difference." The guard laughed, a harsh sound. "Your small earth creatures mean nothing to Drakari warriors." "Maybe," Alex said, still smiling. "But honey badgers don't care how big you are. They fight lions. They fight entire packs of hyenas. They fight anything that threatens their family. And you know what the really scary part is?" The guard leaned closer, curious despite himself. "This one's been enhanced for intelligence and aggression, and I'm his family now." As if responding to his words, Rascal stood up in his carrier and looked directly at the guard. For a moment, the Drakari warrior found himself staring into the eyes of Earth's most fearless predator. Something primitive in his brain screamed danger, but his rational mind dismissed it. How could such a small, furry creature be threatening? The guard walked away, but he found himself looking back at the honey badger several times. There was something unsettling about those intelligent eyes. In the cell, the Zenthari huddled together nervously. "Young human," one whispered. "Do you really think your people will come for you?" Alex was working on the loose wall panel, using a piece of debris to carefully widen the gap. "They're already coming," he said confidently. "Humans don't abandon their children, ever. And when they get here, you'll see why Earth is considered the most dangerous planet in the galaxy." "But the Drakari are strong," a Zenthari said fearfully. "They have powerful ships and weapons." Alex paused in his work and looked at the gentle aliens. "The Drakari think strength means size and weapons. But real strength is different. Real strength is never giving up. Real strength is protecting your family no matter what the cost. And real strength is having a honey badger watching your back." Rascal chittered softly from his carrier, and Alex smiled. In the enhanced honey badger's intelligent mind, plans were forming. The ship's ventilation system had been thoroughly scouted during their 3 days aboard. Guard positions were memorized. Weak points had been identified. The Drakari had made a fundamental error in understanding both humans and honey badgers. They assumed fear would make their prisoners compliant. They didn't realize that cornering a human child would activate the most dangerous instincts of both species. Soon, Alex thought, they would learn that lesson. And the galaxy would discover why you should never, ever threaten a human cub or underestimate their honey badger. The Drakari homeworld of Krath Prime loomed ahead like a red jewel against the stars. Alex pressed his face to the small viewport in his cell, studying the planet's surface. Massive cities sprawled across the continents, connected by gleaming transport networks. This was the heart of an empire that controlled over 50 star systems. Impressive, is it not, small human? Commander Velneth had come to personally observe his most valuable prisoner. Your people will see this and understand the futility of resistance. Alex turned from the viewport and looked up at the Drakari commander. After a week aboard the ship, he had learned to read the subtle body language of the reptilian species. Velneth was confident, perhaps overconfident. "It's very pretty," Alex said politely. "My mom would love to study the atmospheric composition. She's really interested in how different species adapt to their home environments." Velneth's yellow eyes narrowed. The human child showed no fear, no desperation. This was not the behavior he expected from a prisoner facing the might of the Drakari Empire. "You will be separated from the other prisoners when we land," Velneth informed him. "You will be housed in our most secure facility. Your emotional support animal will remain with you to prevent psychological breakdown." Alex nodded and glanced at Rascal's carrier. The honey badger was lying still, but Alex could see his eyes tracking every movement the commander made. Rascal had been studying their captors just as carefully as Alex had been studying the ship. "Thank you," Alex said. "Rascal gets upset when we're apart for too long." The commander walked away, satisfied that his prize prisoner was properly subdued. Behind him, Alex and Rascal exchanged a look that would have chilled the Drakari's blood if he had understood its meaning. The prison complex on Krath Prime was a fortress carved into a mountain. Massive walls rose from the rocky ground, topped with energy barriers and weapon platforms. It housed the Empire's most dangerous political prisoners and was considered completely escape-proof. Alex's new cell was larger than the one on the ship, with an actual bed and a small desk. More importantly, it had a sophisticated ventilation system that connected to the rest of the complex. The Drakari had even provided a proper habitat for Rascal, complete with exercise areas and feeding systems. "They're trying to keep me comfortable," Alex explained to Rascal as he set up the honey badger's new home. "They think happy prisoners are easier to manage." Rascal explored his new environment thoroughly, paying special attention to the ventilation grates and the gaps between wall panels. His enhanced intelligence allowed him to create mental maps far more detailed than any normal animal could manage. 3 days after their arrival, the human diplomatic delegation landed on Krath Prime. Alex watched through his cell's viewport as their shuttle touched down in the prison complex's landing bay. Even from a distance, he could see they carried themselves like military personnel, trying to look like diplomats. The lead negotiator was introduced as James Liu, a tall man with graying hair and calm eyes. With him were Dr. Sarah Kim, apparently a specialist in interspecies relations, and 3 aides whose names Alex didn't catch. They all wore standard diplomatic uniforms and carried themselves with the proper mixture of concern and professionalism. But Alex noticed things the Drakari missed. The way Dr. Kim's eyes swept the complex, cataloging defenses and weak points. How one of the aides unconsciously checked sight lines and cover positions. The small communication devices they thought they had hidden. These weren't just diplomats. They were Ghost Battalion. Emperor Drakthul himself had come to witness the negotiations. The massive Drakari ruler stood 8 feet tall, his scales gleaming with metallic implants that showed his rank. He received the human delegation in the complex's main hall, surrounded by his most elite guards. "Welcome to Krath Prime," the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I trust you are prepared to discuss reasonable terms for your prisoner's release." James Liu stepped forward, his diplomatic mask perfect. "Your Imperial Majesty, we are here to negotiate the immediate release of our citizens. The taking of civilians, especially children, violates numerous galactic treaties. Treaties written by weak species who fear strength," Emperor Drakthul replied dismissively. "Your people will learn respect for Drakari power. We demand territorial concessions, trade agreements, and formal recognition of our expansion rights." Alex, watching through a security feed in his cell, saw the moment when the human delegation's mask slipped. It was just for an instant, but their diplomatic expressions were replaced by something cold and predatory. Then the masks returned, and they continued negotiations as if nothing had happened. "I'm afraid those terms are unacceptable," Dr. Kim said smoothly. "Perhaps we could discuss alternative arrangements." The Emperor's eyes glowed with satisfaction. "You are in no position to refuse. We have broadcast images of your young human throughout the galaxy. Everyone watches to see if the mighty humans will bow to protect one small cub." That was when Alex realized the Drakari's fatal mistake. They thought the galaxy was watching to see if humans would surrender. But the galaxy was actually watching to see what happened when you threatened a human child. In species across known space, beings who had studied humanity were placing bets. Not on whether the humans would surrender, but on how spectacular their response would be. The Zenthari, now freed and safely home, were telling anyone who would listen about the strange calm of the human boy and his unsettling companion. The peaceful traders had recognized something their captors missed. They had been in the presence of sleeping predators. Dr. Priya Sharma, rescued in a separate operation that had seen an entire Drakari patrol fleet mysteriously disappear, was coordinating with human intelligence. Her research on enhanced honey badgers had suddenly become classified material of the highest importance. In his cell, Alex continued his careful observations. He had mapped every corridor, identified every guard rotation, and located every security system. Rascal had explored the ventilation network and found several routes that led to critical ship systems. "How long do you think they'll keep trying to negotiate?" Alex asked Rascal during their evening routine. The honey badger looked at him with those intelligent eyes and made a soft, chittering sound. In their private language, it meant, "Not much longer. They're getting ready." Alex smiled and settled down for sleep. Tomorrow, he suspected, would be very interesting. The Drakari thought they held all the advantages. They had the prisoner, the fortress, and the military might of an empire. But they didn't understand humans. They didn't understand honey badgers. And they certainly didn't understand what happened when you combined human intelligence with honey badger fearlessness. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was considered the most dangerous planet in known space. And it was going to start with one 12-year-old boy and his 30-pound partner who feared absolutely nothing. The negotiations had been going in circles for 2 days. Alex watched from his cell as the human diplomats and Drakari officials met in the complex's central chamber. The aliens grew more frustrated with each session, while the humans maintained their calm, professional demeanor. Emperor Drakthul was losing patience. The mighty Drakari Empire was not accustomed to lengthy discussions with inferior species. In his throne room, he studied reports from across the galaxy. Other species were watching these negotiations with unusual interest, and some were making military preparations that concerned his intelligence officers. "Bring the human cub to the negotiation chamber," the Emperor commanded. "It is time to show these diplomats the reality of their situation." Alex felt a strange calm settle over him as the guards approached his cell. This was it, the moment everything would change. He looked at Rascal, who was alert and ready in his habitat. "Stay close, buddy," Alex whispered. "It's showtime." The guards escorted Alex through corridors he had memorized, past security stations he had cataloged, to the central chamber where the negotiations were taking place. Rascal's travel carrier came with them, the guards still believing the honey badger was just a comfort animal. The chamber was impressive, with soaring ceilings and walls carved from native stone. Emperor Drakthul sat on a massive throne, flanked by his elite guards. The human delegation sat at a curved table facing the Drakari officials. When Alex entered, he saw something flicker across the humans' faces. It wasn't the relief or desperation the Drakari expected. It was recognition, followed by a cold satisfaction that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. "Behold your precious human cub," Emperor Drakthul announced dramatically. "Young, helpless, completely at our mercy. This is what your species values above logic and reason." Alex stood quietly, studying the room. The Drakari had made several tactical errors in the chamber's design. Too many blind spots, inadequate coverage of the ventilation access points, and guard positions that could be easily compromised. He filed it all away. James Liu, the lead negotiator, looked at Alex with what appeared to be paternal concern. "Are you all right, son? Have they hurt you?" "I'm fine, sir," Alex replied politely. "They've actually been pretty nice. Good food, clean quarters, and they let me keep Rascal with me." Emperor Drakthul smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "See how we treat prisoners humanely? But this generosity has limits. Your delegation will accept our terms, or the child's situation may become less comfortable." That was the moment everything changed. The diplomatic masks didn't just slip. They completely disappeared. James Liu's expression transformed from concerned diplomat to something far more dangerous. Dr. Kim's eyes went ice cold, and the 3 aides shifted into positions that clearly revealed their military training. "I'm sorry," James Liu said, his voice still perfectly polite but carrying an undertone that made several Drakari guards step backward. "Could you repeat that? I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you just threaten a human child?" Emperor Drakthul, used to intimidating other species, didn't recognize the warning signs. "I stated facts. The child's welfare depends on your cooperation. This is how negotiations work." Dr. Kim leaned forward slightly, her diplomatic training warring with something much more primitive. "Your Imperial Majesty, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You seem to believe you're negotiating from a position of strength. Are we not?" the Emperor demanded. "We hold your young. We have the military might of an empire. You have only words." Alex watched this exchange with fascination. He had read about human protective instincts in his xenobiology studies, but seeing them activated in real time was impressive. The diplomats were fighting to maintain their cover, but something deeper was taking control. "Let me explain something about humans," James Liu said, rising from his chair. The motion seemed casual. but Alex noticed how it positioned the man for optimal combat angles. We are a social species with very specific behavioral patterns regarding our young. When our children are threatened, we don't negotiate. We eliminate threats. The Emperor laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Brave words from a species barely out of its home system. Guards, perhaps our guest would benefit from a demonstration of Drakari strength. One of the elite guards, a massive warrior in powered armor, stepped toward Alex and raised his hand as if to strike. The blow never landed. Rascal exploded from his carrier like a furry missile. The honey badger's enhanced genetics and natural fearlessness combined into 30 pounds of absolute fury. He latched onto the guard's arm with claws and teeth that could crack armor, climbing toward the alien's throat with deadly intent. Simultaneously, the human delegation dropped all pretense. Dr. Kim produced a weapon from somewhere in her diplomatic robes and fired a stunning blast that dropped 2 guards. The 3 aides moved with lethal precision, disabling security cameras and blocking exits. James Liu had somehow acquired a plasma rifle and was covering the room's main entrance. Ghost Battalion. This is Diplomat 6. Dr. Kim spoke into a communication device that definitely wasn't standard diplomatic equipment. The package is secure. Initiate Phoenix Protocol. Alex found himself pulled behind cover as the chamber erupted into chaos. Through the confusion, he could see Rascal still attached to the guard who had threatened him. The honey badger was systematically working his way toward vital points, with the focused determination of a predator that feared nothing. Alex, James Liu called out, "We're getting you out of here. Stay down and follow my lead." "What about the other prisoners?" Alex asked, even as energy blasts flew overhead. "Already extracted," Dr. Kim replied, somehow maintaining cover fire while speaking. "We've been busy while the Emperor enjoyed his dramatic negotiations." Emperor Drakthul was screaming orders to his remaining guards, demanding explanations for how human diplomats had suddenly become armed commandos. His intelligence officers were frantically trying to understand how their impregnable fortress had been compromised. Outside the complex, alarms began wailing. Through the chamber's viewports, Alex could see explosions in the distance. The diplomatic shuttle that had brought the humans was gone, replaced by something that looked far more military. "How long have you been planning this?" Alex asked as they moved toward what appeared to be a hidden exit. "Since the moment we learned they had taken you," James Liu replied. "Rule 1 of dealing with humans, never threaten our children. Rule 2, if you break Rule 1, we will find you. Rule 3, when we find you, we don't negotiate." Rascal had finally finished with his victim and came bounding back to Alex, covered in alien blood but completely unharmed. The honey badger looked satisfied in the way that only comes from successfully defending family. "Good boy," Alex said, checking his partner for injuries. "I told them you were dangerous." As they reached the hidden exit, explosions rocked the complex. Through the chaos, Alex could hear Emperor Drakthul demanding to know how the humans had infiltrated his most secure facility. The answer was simple, but would have horrified the Drakari if they understood it. The human delegation hadn't been diplomats pretending to be soldiers. They had been Ghost Battalion operators pretending to be diplomats. And Ghost Battalion had one mission: bring human children home no matter the cost. Alex looked back once as they evacuated the chamber. The mighty Drakari Empire had just learned that there were some lines you never cross. And honey badgers, he reflected with satisfaction, really didn't care how big their enemies were. The galaxy was about to discover why humans were the most dangerous species in known space. And it all started with one simple rule: never corner a human cub or their honey badger. The hidden exit led to a tunnel system that the Drakari didn't know existed. Alex followed the Ghost Battalion operatives through passages that had been quietly carved over the past week by human engineers who had arrived disguised as maintenance workers. The entire diplomatic mission had been a cover for the largest rescue operation in human history. "How many of you are there?" Alex asked as they moved through the tunnels, Rascal keeping pace beside them with the satisfaction of a predator who had successfully defended his territory. "Enough," Dr. Kim replied, checking her tactical display. The woman who had posed as a cultural specialist was actually Major Kim of the 7th Special Operations Regiment. "Your species doesn't do things halfway when children are involved." Behind them, the prison complex was in chaos. Rascal's attack had been just the beginning. While the honey badger had dealt with the immediate threat, human operatives had been systematically dismantling the fortress from within. Guard posts went dark, security systems failed, and communication networks crashed as Ghost Battalion revealed their true nature. Package secured, James Liu reported into his communicator. All secondary objectives complete. Request immediate extraction. The response came through speakers hidden throughout the tunnel system. Extraction confirmed, Colonel. Welcome to the party, Colonel. Alex realized that the diplomatic team had been led by one of humanity's most elite military officers. The Drakari had been negotiating with soldiers the entire time, never knowing how thoroughly they had been infiltrated. They emerged from the tunnels into a landing bay that definitely hadn't been there a week ago. Human combat engineers had carved it from solid rock, complete with defensive positions and equipment storage. 3 attack shuttles waited with engines running, their pilots ready for immediate departure. Alex Chen, the pilot of the lead shuttle, was a young woman with lieutenant's insignia. I'm Lieutenant Paula Vega. Your mom asked me to tell you she's safe and waiting for you. Alex felt relief wash over him. Is she really okay? See for yourself. Lieutenant Vega activated a communication screen. Dr. Priya Sharma's face appeared, showing obvious relief when she saw her son. Alex, are you hurt? Did they harm you? I'm fine, Mom. Rascal protected me. He actually bit one of their guards when the guy tried to hit me. Priya's expression shifted from relief to something much more dangerous. Like her son, she was a xenobiologist who understood predatory behavior. Good, I hope it hurt. Around them, the extraction proceeded with military precision. Other shuttles were landing, disgorging more human operatives who had been hidden throughout the Drakari capital. What the aliens had thought was a simple diplomatic mission had actually been the deployment of several hundred Special Forces personnel. Mom, how long have you known about the rescue plan? Alex asked. Since the day after they took you, Priya replied. The Ghost Battalion contacted me while I was being transferred to their holding facility. They needed information about Rascal's capabilities and your psychological profile. Turns out, having a son who bonds with enhanced honey badgers makes you valuable for tactical planning. The shuttles lifted off as explosions continued to rock the prison complex. Through the viewport, Alex could see the Drakari fortress burning. Guard towers collapsed. Weapon emplacements went silent, and emergency vehicles raced through the smoke trying to respond to dozens of simultaneous crises. What's happening to the complex? Alex asked Colonel Liu. Controlled demolition, the colonel replied matter-of-factly. Can't leave a facility intact after it's been used to hold human children. Sets a bad precedent. As they cleared the atmosphere, Alex got his first look at the space battle raging above Krath Prime. The Drakari home fleet, supposedly one of the most powerful naval forces in the galaxy, was being systematically dismantled by ships that didn't appear on any known registry. The human vessels were sleek, angular craft that moved with predatory grace. They struck like lightning and vanished before the Drakari could respond, reappearing in new positions to deliver devastating attacks. This wasn't the kind of naval battle seen in most conflicts. This was a demonstration of technological superiority. The Drakari fleet is 4 times larger, Alex observed, watching the tactical display. Size isn't everything, Lieutenant Vega replied. Those ships were designed by humans who understand that the best predators aren't the biggest ones. They're the smartest ones. Admiral Kate Morrison's flagship Retribution appeared on the main display, a massive vessel that dwarfed even the largest Drakari battleships. But rather than engaging in direct combat, it was coordinating the smaller vessels like a pack leader directing the hunt. Admiral Morrison, Colonel Liu reported, package delivered. All objectives achieved. Acknowledged, Colonel. Outstanding work. Alex, are you ready to go home? Alex looked around the shuttle at the men and women who had risked everything to rescue him. These were humanity's elite warriors, and they had mobilized an entire military operation to save one 12-year-old boy. Yes, ma'am. But what about the other species they've captured? What about the Xanthari merchants and the other prisoners? Already extracted, Admiral Morrison replied with satisfaction. Funny thing about prison breaks. Once you're inside, it's almost as easy to rescue everyone as it is to rescue one person. Every civilian prisoner in Drakari space is currently being evacuated. Below them, the battle was winding down. The Drakari fleet was either destroyed or fleeing, and their ground forces were in complete disarray. The mighty empire that had controlled 50 star systems was learning what happened when you threatened the wrong species. Admiral? Alex asked. What happens now? Will they try to take revenge? There was a pause before Admiral Morrison answered, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who spoke for all of humanity. Alex, there's something you need to understand about humans. We're not just individuals, we're pack animals. When you threaten one of us, especially one of our children, you threaten all of us. The Drakari thought they were negotiating with diplomats. They thought they were fighting a single species. They were wrong. Through the communication system, Alex could hear reports from across the galaxy. Human allies were mobilizing. Species that had been neutral were choosing sides. The galaxy was realizing that humanity had friends they hadn't known about, and enemies who had made a fatal mistake. The Drakari Empire will survive, Admiral Morrison continued, but they'll never threaten human children again, and neither will anyone else. Today, the galaxy learns that there are consequences for harming our young. Alex settled back in his seat, one hand gently stroking Rascal's fur. The honey badger was calm now, his protective instincts satisfied. They had both done their part in the greatest rescue operation in galactic history. Looking out at the stars, Alex realized that this moment would be remembered forever. Not just by humans, but by every species in known space. Today, the galaxy had learned that some lines should never be crossed. And it all started with one simple truth: never corner a human cub or their honey badger. Because when you do, you discover that Earth is home to the most dangerous predators in the universe. 1 month after the Krath Prime incident, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 300 species gathered in the massive chamber on Nexus Station, but all attention focused on the small human boy sitting at the witness table with a honey badger on his lap. Alex Chen looked remarkably calm for someone who had single-handedly changed galactic politics. Beside him, Rascal surveyed the assembled aliens with the confidence of a predator who had proven himself in battle. The honey badger wore a small translation collar that allowed him to understand the proceedings, though he seemed more interested in the security guard's nervous reactions to his presence. The council recognizes Alex Chen of Earth, announced Councillor Thalas, the elderly Arcturian who served as session moderator. You have been invited to testify regarding the recent actions of the Drakari Empire. Alex stood up, careful not to disturb Rascal, and looked around the chamber. A month ago, he had been just another human child living on a frontier station. Now representatives of hundreds of species hung on his every word. Honorable councilors, Alex began, his young voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. What happened on Krath Prime wasn't just about me. It was about what happens when any species threatens children. In the Drakari section, the few remaining representatives sat in stunned silence. Their empire, which had controlled 50 star systems just weeks ago, now controlled 12. The rest had either declared independence or been liberated by human forces. Emperor Drakthul himself was in exile, his throne occupied by a reform government that was desperately trying to rebuild diplomatic relations. The Drakari thought they understood humans, Alex continued. They saw us as just another species to be intimidated. But they made a mistake. They hurt children. And humans don't negotiate when children are threatened. We eliminate threats. Councillor Veltara of the Zenthari delegation leaned forward. The peaceful traders had become some of humanity's strongest advocates after witnessing the rescue operation firsthand. Young Alex, she said gently, many species in this chamber are concerned about humanity's military capabilities. Your rescue required forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. How do we know humans won't use this power for conquest? Alex looked at Rascal, who chittered softly. The honey badger's meaning was clear. Explain it so they understand. Councillor Veltara, honey badgers are considered the most fearless animals on Earth. They'll fight anything, no matter how big or dangerous. Lions, hyenas, even crocodiles. But you know what honey badgers don't do? They don't hunt for sport. They don't attack unless threatened. They just want to be left alone to protect their families. Alex gestured to the assembled delegates. Humans are the honey badgers of space. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to protect our cubs. But if you threaten our children, you'll discover that Earth produces the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Admiral Kate Morrison sat in the human delegation, watching her young citizen with pride. The military operation to rescue Alex had cost the Human Defense Alliance enormous resources, But the political benefits were incalculable. Dozens of species had requested defense treaties. Hundreds more had opened diplomatic relations. And everyone now understood that humans took child protection very seriously. Admiral Morrison, called Counselor Drakvin, one of the few Drakari brave enough to attend the session. The Empire wishes to formally apologize for our actions. We had no understanding of human protective instincts, but many species question whether your response was proportional. Admiral Morrison rose slowly, her expression neutral but her eyes cold. Counselor, let me be very clear about human proportional response doctrine. When our children are threatened, we don't calculate proportional responses. We calculate effective ones. The Drakari Empire learned this lesson. I hope other species won't need similar instruction. The chamber fell silent. Every delegate understood the implication. The humans had dismantled a galactic empire to rescue 12 people, including one child. The message was unmistakable. Don't threaten human children. However, Admiral Morrison continued, we're not unreasonable. The new Drakari government has agreed to protocols protecting all children in their territory. In return, we're providing humanitarian aid and technical assistance. Humans believe in redemption as much as we believe in protection. Alex watched the proceedings with fascination. Politics was more complex than xenobiology, but the underlying patterns were similar. Species competed for resources and territory, formed alliances for mutual benefit, and established hierarchies based on strength and intelligence. What was different was humanity's approach to child protection. Most species defended their own young, but humans had extended that protection to include all children. The rescue of the Xanthari younglings and other alien children had shocked the galaxy more than any military demonstration. Young Alex, Counselor Thalis said, you have become something of a galactic celebrity. How do you feel about the attention? Alex smiled and scratched behind Rascal's ears. The honey badger made a contented sound that the translation caller rendered as, life is good when family is safe. I just want to go back to studying xenobiology with my parents, Alex said honestly. But if my experience helps other children stay safe, then I'm glad it happened. Well, not glad it happened, but glad something good came from it. And what about your companion? Asked Counselor Veltara, eyeing Rascal with the mixture of fascination and nervousness that the honey badger seemed to inspire in all non-humans. He has become quite famous as well. Alex looked down at Rascal, who was now studying the security guards with professional interest. The honey badger had adapted to galactic celebrity with typical honey badger indifference. Fame meant nothing to a creature that had once climbed onto a Drakari warrior and proceeded to demonstrate why honey badgers feared nothing. Rascal just wants to protect his family, Alex said. He doesn't care about politics or fame. He cares about keeping me safe. That's what honey badgers do. As the session concluded, delegates from dozens of species approached the human section. Some wanted to discuss defense treaties. Others offered trade agreements. A few simply wanted to meet the boy and his honey badger who had changed galactic politics. But the most significant moment came when the Cathari delegation, representing a species known for their aggressive expansion policies, quietly approached Admiral Morrison. Admiral, the Cathari representative said in hushed tones, our intelligence services have been studying recent events. We want to ensure there are no misunderstandings regarding human territorial boundaries. Admiral Morrison smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both diplomatic and threatening. I'm sure we can avoid any unfortunate incidents, Ambassador. Humans are very reasonable, as long as our children are safe. As the delegation prepared to leave Nexus Station, Alex found himself surrounded by young aliens from various species. Word had spread that the human boy was approachable and kind, unlike the terrifying adults who had dismantled an empire. Is it true that all human adults will fight to protect children? Asked a young Xanthari, her large eyes wide with curiosity. Not just human children, Alex confirmed. All children. That's what makes humans different. We think all cubs deserve protection. A small Arcturian youngling pointed at Rascal with a trembling finger. Is your honey badger really dangerous? Alex looked down at Rascal, who was lying peacefully in his carrier, looking like nothing more than a furry, sleepy animal. Only to people who try to hurt his family. Otherwise, he's very gentle. As if to prove the point, Rascal allowed the young alien to gently touch his fur. The honey badger's enhanced intelligence recognized the difference between threats and innocent curiosity. Later, as they boarded the transport back to human space, Alex reflected on the past month. The galaxy had learned important lessons about humanity, but humans had learned something too. They weren't alone in the universe, and there were good species worth protecting. Think this will change anything? Dr. Priya Sharma asked her son as they settled in for the journey home. Alex looked out at the stars, where human ships now patrolled space lanes that had once been controlled by the Drakari Empire. In the distance, he could see vessels from dozens of species flying under the protection of the Human Defense Alliance. "I think it already has, Mom," Alex said. "The galaxy knows about humans now. They know what we'll do to protect children, but more importantly, they know we'll protect their children too." Rascal chittered softly from his carrier, and Alex smiled. In honey badger language, it meant mission accomplished. 6 months later, in a military briefing room on a distant world, an intelligence officer from the Karthok hegemony presented a file to his superiors. The aggressive species had been considering raids on human frontier settlements, hoping to capture civilians for slave labor. "Sir," the officer said nervously, "I've completed the threat assessment on human settlements. I strongly recommend we find different targets." "Why?" demanded the hegemony's war chief. "They're just another species with a few colonies." The intelligence officer activated a holographic display showing footage from Krath Prime. Explosions lit up the night sky as the Drakari Empire's most secure fortress crumbled under human assault. In the center of the chaos, a small figure could be seen evacuating with what appeared to be a furry animal. "Sir, this is what humans call the Alex Chen incident. It's become required study material for military academies across the galaxy." "One child caused all that destruction?" "No, sir. One child being threatened caused all that destruction. The humans have a saying that's become quite popular among military planners. Never corner a human cub or their honey badger. I recommend we take that advice very seriously." The war chief studied the footage for a long moment, watching the systematic dismantling of what had been one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. "Find different targets," he ordered quietly. And across the galaxy, in nurseries and schools and family homes, children of dozens of species slept safely under the protection of humans who had made it clear that some lines should never be crossed. The galaxy had learned its lesson well.
The cargo manifest listed it as scientific equipment. That was the first lie. The second lie was that the container had proper environmental controls. By the time anyone noticed the discrepancies, 3 smugglers were already dead, and Orbital Station 47 had bigger problems than paperwork. Brent Wilson sat in the observation deck, reviewing quarterly supply reports when the alarm started. Not the gentle chimes that announced shift changes or the periodic beeps of routine maintenance. These were the screaming, building-wide sirens that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. His datapad flickered and died, replaced by emergency protocol screens. Red text scrolled across every display in sight. Containment breach. Cargo Bay Delta. Class 5 biological hazard. All personnel evacuate to designated safe zones immediately. Brent ran. The corridors filled with bodies within seconds. 17 different species all trying to squeeze through passages designed for orderly traffic. A Taurian merchant knocked over a display of imported fabrics in his haste. 2 Hellion engineers abandoned their tool carts and sprinted for the nearest shelter point. The crowd moved like a living thing, driven by pure survival instinct. Someone screamed behind him. Brent glanced back and saw the security feeds projected on a public terminal. The image showed Cargo Bay Delta, or what remained of it. Shipping containers lay scattered like toys. 3 bodies sprawled across the deck plating, torn apart with surgical precision. And in the center of the carnage stood something that should not exist outside nightmares. The Voidclaw was 15 feet of armored death. Its scales shimmered with bioelectric charges that arced between the metal walls. 6 legs ending in retractable claws that could slice through starship hulls. A head full of teeth designed to crush bone and tear flesh. Electromagnetic whiskers twitched as it sensed the panic spreading through the station. Brent recognized it immediately. Everyone in galactic space knew what Voidclaws looked like. They were the reason entire sectors maintained permanent military blockades. The species that ended 7 colonies before the hegemony decided some planets were better left alone. The blast doors began slamming shut across the station. Heavy plates of reinforced metal dropped from ceiling housings with deep, resonant booms. Sections sealed off one by one as the emergency AI worked to contain the threat. Brent made it through a door with seconds to spare, feeling the rush of air as it locked behind him. Commander Tyrell's voice echoed through the intercom system. His normally calm tone had developed an edge. All personnel were to remain in shelter zones until further notice. Security teams were responding. Do not attempt to engage the hostile. Do not attempt to flee your designated area. Reinforcements were being contacted. Brent found himself pressed into a shelter zone with 40 other people. A cargo handler was crying quietly in the corner. 2 Kelvin merchants argued about whose fault this was. A family of Draxi huddled together, their children making scared chirping sounds. The security feeds continued broadcasting on wall monitors. Everyone watched in horrified silence as the Voidclaw moved through the station. It didn't hunt so much as explore, testing doors with those massive claws, investigating corridors with its electromagnetic senses. Military drones attempted to engage and were destroyed in seconds. The creature moved with disturbing speed for something so large. Then it reached the central plaza. Hundreds of civilians had taken shelter there, sealing themselves behind transparent aluminum barriers. The Voidclaw circled them like a shark, scales crackling with energy. Each time it struck a barrier, people screamed and pushed backward. The creature's confusion seemed to grow with each failed attempt to understand its environment. Brent recognized the behavior pattern even if he didn't fully understand it. This wasn't hunting. This was something else, something wrong. Security Chief Harland appeared on the command channel, coordinating drone strikes and containment teams. Nothing worked. The Voidclaw shrugged off everything they threw at it. Commander Tyrell argued with Galactic Council representatives who demanded lethal force. The problem was that weapons powerful enough to kill a Voidclaw would also breach the station hull and kill everyone aboard. That was when Ryan Foster appeared on the security feeds. He crawled through a maintenance shaft that led directly to the plaza's upper level. His movements were calm and deliberate, completely at odds with the chaos everywhere else. Brent watched in disbelief as he emerged onto an observation platform 30 feet above the trapped civilians. Security Chief Harlan spotted him immediately. His voice crackled through every speaker. What was he doing? Get out of there, evacuate immediately. This was a direct order. Ryan ignored him completely. He stood on the platform, studying the Voidclaw through some kind of analysis visor. His equipment bag hung from one shoulder. He showed no signs of fear, no indication that he understood the danger. Or perhaps he understood it better than anyone else. The Voidclaw continued circling below, growing more agitated with each passing moment. Its bioelectric discharges increased in frequency. The creature was reaching a breaking point, and when that happened, the barriers would fail and hundreds would die. Ryan activated something on his equipment belt. A sound emerged that Brent felt more than heard, a deep resonance that seemed to bypass his ears entirely. The Voidclaw froze mid-stride. The shelter zone fell silent except for breathing and the distant hum of station systems, every eye fixed on the monitors. Ryan began descending the stairs to the plaza floor, still making those strange sounds. The galaxy's most feared predator turned to face him fully. Brent realized he was holding his breath. Around him, 40 people watched a human man walk calmly towards certain death. He reached the bottom of the stairs and continued forward without hesitation. The Voidclaw took its first step toward him, bioelectric arcs dancing across its scales like living lightning. Ryan Foster had grown up surrounded by things that wanted to kill him, not metaphorically, literally. His childhood home sat on the edge of a wildlife reserve in Montana, where grizzly bears wandered through the backyard and mountain lions screamed in the night. His parents ran a rehabilitation center for aggressive predators, the ones other facilities had given up on. The animals, everyone said, were too dangerous to save. He learned early that fear made creatures more dangerous than their nature ever could. The sounds he was making came from recordings he had studied for months. Voidclaw maternal vocalizations, captured by remote sensors on their blockaded homeworld. Frequencies that most species couldn't properly reproduce because they lacked the right vocal structure. Humans could manage it if they tried hard enough. The Voidclaw stopped circling and focused entirely on him. Its electromagnetic whiskers extended, scanning him from 30 feet away. Ryan felt the static charge raising the hair on. His arms, his heart rate stayed steady. This was the critical moment. Show fear now and everything would collapse. He continued the sounds while slowly lowering himself into a crouch, non-threatening posture, submissive but not vulnerable. The same techniques he used with aggressive dogs and territorial cats, adapted for something infinitely more dangerous. In the command center, Commander Tyrell watched with his hand hovering over the authorization panel. One word from him and security teams would breach the plaza with lethal weapons. The Galactic Council representatives were screaming for exactly that. Kill it now before it kills her. Eliminate the threat. Tyrell held them back by seconds. The Voidclaw took another step forward, then another. Its scales shimmered with bioelectric charges that arced to nearby metal surfaces, 20 feet away now, close enough that Amy could see the details other people only knew from horror stories. The retractable claws that extended and retracted with each step. The teeth designed to crush through bone. The eyes that saw in spectrums no human could imagine. She noticed something else too. The creature was young, not fully grown. Its proportions were slightly off, the awkwardness of adolescence visible in how it moved. This was not an adult apex predator. This was a juvenile torn from its mother and dumped into a nightmare. Ryan adjusted his approach based on that realization. He changed the vocalizations slightly, adding distress calls mixed with comfort sounds, the same way a human might soothe a lost child. Come here, you are safe. I will not hurt you. 15 feet. Security Chief Harland was arguing loudly over the command channel. This was insane. Humans were supposed to be the reasonable ones, not the crazy ones, since when did reasonable mean walking toward certain death? Ryan extended his hand slowly, palm up, fingers relaxed. His analysis visor fed him data that xenobiologists had compiled about Voidclaw pack bonding. He mimicked the postures they used with each other, the slight tilt of the head, the deliberate blink pattern that signaled trust. 10 feet. The Voidclaw's aggressive stance began to soften. Its scales still crackled with energy, but the charges were less frequent. The electromagnetic whiskers continued scanning her, processing information through senses humans barely understood. Whatever it detected seemed to confuse it. 5 feet. Ryan could feel the heat radiating from its body now. The bioelectric field made his skin tingle. He continued speaking in low, calm tones, mixing earth-animal handling techniques with the Voidclaw vocalizations, talking to it the way he would talk to any frightened creature. You are confused. This place is wrong, but you are not in danger from me. The Voidclaw extended its massive head toward his outstretched hand. In the observation room, a Taurian ambassador whispered that what they were witnessing should be impossible. Voidclaws did not bond with other species. They barely bonded with each other outside mating pairs. This creature should have killed her already. The fact that it had not defied everything they knew about the species. Contact. The Voidclaw's snout touched Ryan's palm. Its scales were warm, almost hot to the touch. The bioelectric charge tingled against his skin but did not hurt. He held perfectly still, letting it investigate him. The electromagnetic whiskers brushed across his arm, his shoulder, his face, reading him the way humans might read a book. He began speaking again, softer now, just sounds, nothing with specific meaning. The tone mattered more than the words. His other hand moved slowly, carefully, to a spot behind its auditory ridge, a place he had noticed it trying to scratch earlier but could not quite reach. He applied gentle pressure and began scratching. The Voidclaw's eyes half closed. A sound emerged from deep in its chest, a low rumble that researchers had never recorded before. The aggressive posture melted away entirely. The bioelectric charges faded to occasional sparks. It leaned into his touch like a cat seeking affection. Ryan kept scratching while lowering himself to sit on the plaza floor. The Voidclaw followed him down, settling beside him with its massive head in his lap. He continued petting it, running his hands along its scales, finding all the spots that made that strange, rumbling sound grow louder. On the command center screens, 40 different camera angles showed the same impossible scene. A human man sitting calmly on the floor, petting the galaxy's most feared predator. The creature that ended civilizations now making content sounds while he scratched behind its ears. Commander Tyrell slowly moved his hand away from the authorization panel. Security Chief Harland stared at the monitors in stunned silence. The Galactic Council. Representatives stopped shouting. Ryan continued petting the Voidclaw until its breathing slowed and deepened. The rumbling softened. Within minutes, the creature had fallen asleep with its head still in his lap, trusting him completely. He activated his comm unit quietly. "Commander Tyrell, we need a containment solution, not a body bag. This juvenile needs help, not execution. Can you manage that?" The command channel stayed silent for a long moment before Tyrell responded. His voice carried a mixture of awe and disbelief. "We will figure something out. Just keep doing whatever you are doing." Ryan smiled and continued petting the sleeping predator while the entire station watched in amazement. 2 hours passed before anyone figured out what to do next. Ryan sat cross-legged on the plaza floor with a sleeping Voidclaw using his lap as a pillow. His legs had gone numb 40 minutes ago, but he did not dare move. The creature weighed close to 800 pounds, and sudden movement might wake it in a confused state. Better to endure the discomfort. Around him, the station slowly came back to life. The emergency lockdown remained active, but the immediate panic had faded. People pressed against the transparent barriers, watching the impossible scene. Children pointed while their parents held them back. A Kelvin merchant was recording everything on multiple devices, probably planning to sell the footage later. In the command center, Commander Tyrell had assembled every xenobiologist and engineer on the station. They filled the briefing room, arguing about containment options. Standard holding cells were designed for smaller creatures. The cargo bay was destroyed. Building a new enclosure would take weeks they did not have. Security Chief Harland wanted to keep it sedated until proper facilities arrived. A xenobiologist named Patricia argued that drugging it again would erase any trust Ryan had built. Another engineer suggested spacing it, just opening an airlock and solving the problem permanently. Ryan listened to all of this through his comm unit and resisted the urge to tell them exactly what he thought of that last suggestion. The footage had already spread beyond the station. Ships docked at the orbital platforms transmitted the recordings to their homeworlds. Within an hour, every major network across 17 species was showing the same clip. A human man calmly petting a Voidclaw during an emergency lockdown. The views climbed into the billions. Galactic Council security forces arrived on a fast courier ship, demanding answers. A team of officials in formal uniforms marched into the command center and immediately started asking questions that nobody could answer properly. How did a human overcome millions of years of Voidclaw predatory evolution? What technology was he using? Was this some kind of military experiment? Commander Tyrell tried to explain that Ryan was just a wildlife specialist who happened to understand animal behavior. The officials clearly did not believe him. They demanded full scans of his equipment, genetic testing, psychological evaluation. Humans could not simply pet Voidclaws. There had to be some trick. Ryan finally got tired of listening to them. He activated his comm unit and spoke directly to the command center. "There is no trick. It was a frightened juvenile in an unfamiliar environment. I treated it like any scared animal because that is what it is. Every species in this galaxy seems to have forgotten that predators are still just animals." One of the officials responded immediately. "Voidclaws are not animals. They are extinction-level threats. They destroyed 7 colonies, killed thousands. You cannot domesticate a natural disaster. Ryan looked down at the sleeping creature in his lap, at the way its scales rose and fell with each breath. He thought about the grizzly bears he had rehabilitated as a teenager, the ones everyone said were beyond saving. The mountain lions that learned to trust him. The wolves that never quite lost their wild nature but understood he meant no harm. Earth is full of apex predators, he said quietly. Sharks, bears, big cats, crocodiles. Humans learned to live alongside them thousands of years ago. We did not do it by treating them as monsters. We did it by understanding them, respecting them, recognizing that they act according to their nature, not out of malice. The command center fell silent. He continued, "This juvenile was drugged by smugglers and torn from its mother. It woke up in a metal box surrounded by unfamiliar smells and sounds. Every attempt to contain it through force made it more scared and therefore more dangerous. Nobody tried to understand what it needed. You just saw teeth and claws and reacted with fear." A long pause followed. Then one of the officials spoke again, more carefully this time. "What do you suggest we do with it?" "Return it home," Ryan said immediately. "It belongs with its own kind. This creature is a juvenile that can be rehabilitated. You have a chance to do something right instead of adding another body to the count." Commander Tyrell pointed out the obvious problem. The hegemony maintains a blockade around the Voidclaw homeworld. They will not allow us to approach, let alone return a specimen. The military standing orders are to destroy any Voidclaw found in galactic space. "Then the standing orders are wrong," Ryan replied. He felt the Voidclaw stir slightly and resumed scratching behind its auditory ridge. The rumbling sound returned and it settled back into sleep. Brent Wilson had been watching everything from the observation deck. He made his way to the command center and offered a perspective that nobody else had considered. The whole galaxy just watched a human pet a Voidclaw like a dog. Every species sees humans differently now. Maybe that gives us leverage to challenge those standing orders. Patricia, the xenobiologist, agreed. The scientific community has wanted access to study Voidclaws for decades. If there is any chance of understanding them, of potentially establishing peaceful contact, this is it. We cannot waste this opportunity. The debate continued for another hour. Ryan stopped listening and focused on the creature in his lap. He had named it Ripley after a character from old Earth fiction who also dealt with dangerous aliens. The name felt appropriate. Eventually, Commander Tyrell made a decision. They would keep Ripley in a hastily constructed containment area while attempting to negotiate with the hegemony blockade. Ryan would remain as the primary handler. If the Voidclaws proved hostile to return attempts, they would reassess. It was not perfect, but it was better than execution. As medical teams moved in with portable containment equipment, Ryan finally stood up. His legs screamed in protest and he nearly fell. Brent caught his arm and helped him stay upright. The Voidclaw woke immediately, rising to its feet with scales crackling. Ryan put his hand on its snout and made those calming sounds again. The creature relaxed, though it stayed alert and watchful. He led it toward the containment area like someone walking a very large, very dangerous dog. The whole station watched as the most feared predator in the galaxy followed a human man peacefully through the corridors, trusting him completely. The transmission arrived at 400 station time, when most of the crew was asleep. Brent Wilson was pulling a double shift in communications when the signal hit their receivers. At first, he thought it was malfunction noise. The audio spectrum showed nothing but static and electromagnetic interference, but the signal repeated with mathematical precision, following patterns that suggested intelligence. He ran it through every translation protocol in the database. Nothing worked. The signal remained gibberish. He was about to file it as space junk interference when he noticed something odd. The electromagnetic frequencies matched Voidclaw bioelectric signatures almost exactly. He contacted Commander Tyrell immediately. Within 30 minutes, the command center was full again. Xenolinguists, communications specialists, and anyone with relevant expertise gathered around the signal analysis stations. They played the transmission over and over, searching for meaning in the static. Ryan arrived with Ripley following close behind. The Void Claw had refused to let him out of its sight for more than a few minutes. It settled on the floor beside his chair, head resting on his feet. Several crew members still edged away nervously despite everything that had happened. He listened to the transmission once and sat up straighter. Play that again. They did. Ryan closed his eyes, focusing entirely on the sounds. The patterns felt familiar somehow. Not words exactly, but communication. The same way whale songs carried meaning through their structure rather than specific syllables. "That is them," he said finally. "The Void Claws are trying to contact us. They are using electromagnetic communication, which is why it sounds like static through our audio systems." A Taurian linguist shook his head. "We have monitored their homeworld for decades. We never detected anything like language, just animal sounds and interference." "Because you were listening with the wrong equipment," Ryan replied. He pulled up his analysis visor data, the same tools he used to understand Ripley. "Look at the bioelectric patterns. They are not random. Each variation carries information. Their entire language exists in electromagnetic frequencies that most species experience as noise." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If true, then every attempt at communication with Void Claws had failed because nobody was listening properly. They had been trying to talk and everyone just heard static. Commander Tyrell made a decision. "Route that signal through our electromagnetic scanners and see if we can translate the patterns into something our systems recognize." It took 3 hours of work, but they finally managed a rough translation. The message was simple and devastating. "We seek our lost child. You have shown it kindness. We wish to speak with the humans who can hear us. Please respond." The command center erupted in chaos. Galactic Council representatives immediately started arguing about protocol violations and security concerns. The Hegemony blockade commander contacted them within minutes, demanding they ignore the transmission and maintain radio silence. Any communication could be a trap. Ryan stood up and Ripley rose with him. He looked at Commander Tyrell directly. "We have to respond. They are asking for their child back. What kind of people would we be if we ignored that?" Security Chief Harland pointed out the obvious danger. "We have no proof this is genuine. It could be psychological warfare, a method to infiltrate our systems." "Then we verify it," Ryan said. He looked down at Ripley and made a decision. "We let them see their juvenile. If they are really the parents or pack members, Ripley will recognize them. Animals do not lie about that kind of thing." Patricia, the xenobiologist, agreed enthusiastically. "This could be the breakthrough we need. First contact with a species we have only ever fought. The scientific value alone justifies the risk." The debate continued for hours. Various officials weighed in remotely. Some demanded they destroy Ripley immediately and cut all communication. Others saw the opportunity Ryan described. The Hegemony blockade commander threatened military action if they proceeded. Brent Wilson finally spoke up. "The whole galaxy watched a human pet a Void Claw. That footage changed how billions of people view this species. If we shut down communication now, we look like cowards. Worse, we prove that fear controls our decisions more than logic." Commander Tyrell made the call. They would establish communication and arrange a visual link. Ryan would be present with Ripley. If the juvenile showed recognition and trust, they would proceed. If not, they would terminate contact immediately. The next transmission was sent with careful electromagnetic modulation, using the same patterns they detected. A simple message: "We hear you, your child is safe, we wish to speak." The response came within minutes. A video link established through jury-rigged equipment that translated electromagnetic patterns into visual data. The screen flickered and resolved into an image that made everyone in the command center hold their breath. 3 adult Void Claws appeared, each one significantly larger than Ripley. Behind them, dozens more moved in what appeared to be some kind of structured environment. Not savage wilderness, but a civilization of sorts. Architecture designed for their unique senses. Technology that humans barely recognized. The lead Voidclaw spoke, and the translation systems converted electromagnetic patterns into text that scrolled across screens. "We are the conclave of the shadowed path. We thank you for protecting our young one. We have tried to speak with your kinds for many cycles, but you only hear noise where we speak truth." Ryan stepped forward with Ripley beside him. The juvenile Voidclaw made excited sounds, and its bioelectric field pulsed with patterns the translation system marked as joy and recognition. The adult Voidclaws responded in kind. Commander Tyrell spoke carefully. "We were told your species destroyed 7 colonies, that you were hostile to all galactic life." The lead Voidclaw's response came with something the translator marked as deep sorrow. "Those were not colonies. They were smuggler bases that stole our children. When we came to retrieve them, your kinds attacked. We defended ourselves. We never wished for war." The command center erupted again, but this time with different energy. If true, this changed everything. The 7 colony extinctions were not unprovoked attacks. They were rescue operations that went wrong because nobody could communicate. The Voidclaw continued, "Your human can hear us when others cannot. He has shown our child more kindness than we expected from your kinds. We wish to open dialogue, to explain what your people misunderstood. Perhaps through human intermediaries we can find peace." Ryan looked at Ripley, then at the screen, then at Commander Tyrell. "We have to try. This could end decades of conflict." Commander Tyrell nodded slowly, "Then let us begin." News traveled fast in galactic space, but understanding traveled slower. 3 weeks after the first communication, Ryan found himself at the center of something much bigger than he had imagined. The footage of him petting Ripley had been viewed over 1 trillion times across dozens of worlds. What started as a crisis response had become a cultural phenomenon. Humans were suddenly in demand. The Galactic Council formally requested Earth send wildlife specialists, animal behaviorists, and xenobiologists to help reassess their classification of hostile species. The list was longer than Ryan expected. 47 different species were currently labeled as too dangerous for contact. Most had never received proper behavioral assessment. They were judged on isolated incidents and fear rather than actual study. Brent Wilson handled the incoming requests while Ryan worked with Ripley and the Voidclaw delegation. His office had become a coordination hub for what everyone was calling the Understanding Initiative. Earth had responded by recruiting specialists from wildlife reserves, zoos, marine facilities, and conservation programs. Hundreds of experts were preparing to spread across the galaxy. Patricia helped Ryan develop training protocols. They worked in the converted cargo bay that now served as a cultural exchange center. Ripley dozed in the corner while they recorded videos explaining stress signals, threat displays versus defensive posturing, and how to recognize communication attempts that did not match standard patterns. The hegemony blockade had been officially dissolved after 3 weeks of political pressure. The Voidclaw delegation provided evidence that their kind had been attempting peaceful contact for decades. Every incident classified as an attack had actually been parents trying to rescue stolen children from smuggling operations. The galaxy had built walls around victims while treating them as monsters. Commander Tyrell oversaw the transformation of Orbital Station 47 into something unprecedented. What was once just a trading hub now hosted diplomatic talks between species that had never spoken before. The plaza where Ryan first made contact had been renamed Unity Plaza, and it saw daily demonstrations of interspecies understanding. Ryan stood in that plaza now, showing a group of young Taurian students how to approach Ripley safely. The Voidclaw cooperated beautifully, patient with the children in ways that would have seemed impossible a month ago. Their parents watched nervously from a distance, but they watched. That was progress. One of the students asked why humans were not afraid like everyone else. Ryan knelt to their level and explained. Earth was full of creatures that could kill us easily. Big predators with teeth and claws, venomous animals, things that hunted in the dark. But humans learned something important. Fear makes everything more dangerous. Understanding creates safety. When you respect a creature and learn how it communicates, you can live alongside it peacefully. Another student pointed at Ripley. But that is a void claw. They end civilizations. Ripley is a juvenile who was scared and confused, Ryan corrected gently. Not a monster, just a child taken from their family. Would you want people to be afraid of you forever because you cried when you were lost? The students considered this while Ripley rumbled contentedly under Ryan's continued scratching. The demonstration ended with several children brave enough to touch the Void Claw's scales under careful supervision. Their parents looked shocked, but did not intervene. That evening, Commander Tyrell called Ryan to his office. The view through his windows showed ships from 20 different species docked at the station. Trade had increased significantly since the incident. Fear drove people away, but understanding brought them together. He showed him a report from Earth. The Understanding Initiative had received over 2 million applications in 3 weeks. Wildlife specialists, veterinarians, animal trainers, researchers. Every branch of Earth's conservation efforts wanted to help extend human expertise to the galactic level. "We are changing the galaxy," Tyrell said quietly. "One patient approach at a time. The Galactic Council wants to establish permanent human liaison positions for every species currently classified as hostile. They are restructuring first contact protocols based on your methods." Ryan felt the weight of that responsibility. What if I was just lucky? What if Ripley was unusually calm? What if this does not work with other species? Patricia entered the office then, carrying her data pad with analysis results. She had been studying the 47 species on the hostile list. Her findings suggested most of them showed behavioral patterns consistent with fear responses or communication breakdowns rather than genuine aggression. A few were legitimately dangerous, but even those might be approachable with proper understanding. "The data supports your methods," Patricia said. "Earth's environment forced humans to develop unusual skills in reading animal behavior across species boundaries. Most galactic civilizations evolved on worlds with fewer apex predators. They never learned the same lessons about coexistence. You are not lucky. You are trained." Brent Wilson joined them with more news. 3 species had reached out directly requesting human mediators. They had been isolated for decades because of behavioral misunderstandings that led to violent incidents. Now they wanted chances to explain themselves properly. One was a species called the Thornbacks, who communicated through displays that other species interpreted as threats. Another was the Deep Whispers, whose language existed in subsonic ranges that caused panic responses in most species. The third was the Hiveborn, whose collective consciousness scared people who did not understand it. All of them had spent years trying to tell anyone who would listen that they were not hostile. Nobody had listened until now. Ryan looked at the list of species waiting for human contact. Each one represented lives that had been isolated or hunted because of fear and misunderstanding. Each one was a chance to do better, to choose understanding over violence. He thought about Ripley sleeping peacefully in the next room. The creature that was supposed to be a monster but turned out to be just a scared child. How many other supposed monsters were actually victims of the galaxy's fear? "I will help train the teams going to these species," Ryan said finally. "But we need to be careful. Not every situation will be like Ripley. Some of these creatures might actually be dangerous. We have to respect that." Commander Tyrell nodded. "We are not asking anyone to be careless, just to try understanding before defaulting to fear. That seems reasonable." It did seem reasonable. Ryan just hoped the galaxy agreed. Outside the window, ships came and went. Each one carried people who had seen the footage of a human petting a void claw and decided that maybe, just maybe, there was a better way to approach the unknown. The change was spreading, one species at a time, one patient approach at a time, all because someone chose to extend their hand instead of raising a weapon. 6 months changed the galaxy more than 6 centuries of fear. Brent Wilson stood in Unity Plaza watching Ryan conduct another training session. The space had evolved significantly from that terrifying day when a void claw escaped containment. Now it hosted regular demonstrations where people from across the galaxy learned to understand rather than fear. 3 adult void claws had joined Ripley on the station. They served as cultural ambassadors, teaching willing students about their civilization. Children from a dozen species played in the plaza while their parents watched. The sight that would have triggered evacuation alarms months ago now felt routine. Ryan finished explaining threat assessment to a group of new human recruits bound for the Thornback homeworld next week. He emphasized reading environmental context, respecting boundaries, and recognizing that aggressive displays often masked fear. The students took notes seriously. They understood the responsibility they carried. Ripley dozed in a patch of artificial sunlight, completely at ease. The juvenile had grown noticeably larger in 6 months. Soon it would return home permanently, though it visited the station regularly with its family. The bond with Ryan remained strong, proving that understanding could bridge impossible divides. Commander Tyrell approached Brent with updated reports. The Understanding Initiative had deployed human specialists to 32 previously hostile species. 28 had resulted in successful contact and ongoing dialogue. 3 remained in assessment phase. Only 1 had proven genuinely incompatible with peaceful contact due to fundamental biological drives that could not be safely managed. That was a better success rate than anyone predicted. The Thornbacks turned out to communicate through elaborate spine displays that other species had interpreted as attack preparation. With human mediation, they established trade relations within weeks. The Deep Whispers now had translator technology that shifted their subsonic language into audible ranges, ending decades of isolation. The Hive-born collective consciousness became a valued resource for complex problem-solving after humans explained their nature was collaboration, not domination. Each success built momentum. Species that had been enemies for generations found common ground through human intermediaries who treated everyone as potentially reasonable rather than inherently hostile. Brent watched a young Kelvin child approach Ripley nervously. Ryan guided them through proper introduction protocols. The child placed a tiny hand on Ripley's scales and gasped in delight at the warmth. Ripley rumbled contentedly, patient as always. The child's parents recorded everything, tears streaming down their faces at witnessing something they never thought possible. Patricia joined them with her datapad showing the latest research. She had been documenting behavioral patterns across species, building a comprehensive database of communication methods. Her work would become standard curriculum at xenobiology programs across the galaxy. "We have requests from 40 more species," she said, "not classified as hostile, just as poorly understood. They want human consultation on establishing better relationships with galactic society. Apparently we have a reputation now." Security Chief Harland walked through the plaza without the tension he used to carry. He had been one of the biggest skeptics initially, but watching repeated successes had changed his perspective. Now he trained security teams on de-escalation techniques borrowed from Earth animal control. Force remained an option, but it moved down the list of responses instead of being the default. Ryan finished his training session and joined the group. Ripley followed him as always, massive head nudging his shoulder affectionately. He scratched behind its auditory ridge without thinking, the gesture now automatic. Commander Tyrell pulled up statistics on the command displays. Trade through Orbital Station 47 had increased 300%. Scientific collaboration between previously isolated species had produced innovations in technology and medicine. Military budgets were shifting toward understanding initiatives instead of defense platforms. Insurance rates for space travel had dropped significantly as hostile encounters decreased. The economic benefits alone justified the approach, but the cultural impact went deeper. A generation of children was growing up watching humans pet void claws and communicate with thornbacks. For them, The galaxy's supposed monsters were just neighbors who needed proper introductions. Ryan received a message on his datapad and smiled. The Voidclaw Conclave had officially invited him to their homeworld as an honored guest. They wanted to establish a permanent human cultural exchange program. Other species were making similar requests. Humanity had found its niche in galactic society not through military might or economic dominance, but through patience and willingness to understand. A reporter from the Galactic News Network arrived to interview Ryan about his experiences. This was the 15th such interview in 6 months. The reporter asked the same question everyone wanted to know. Why did he approach the Voidclaw when everyone else ran? Ryan gave the same answer he always gave, but he refined it slightly each time. Fear is a choice, not feeling fear, but how you respond to it. Every creature in this galaxy acts according to its nature and needs. When you respect that and try to understand it, fear becomes unnecessary. The real danger is not the creature itself, but our refusal to learn. The reporter asked what came next. Ryan looked at Ripley, then at the children playing in Unity Plaza, then at the ships docked outside carrying specialists to distant worlds. He thought about grizzly bears in Montana and mountain lions in the dark, about his parents teaching him that every creature deserves a chance to be understood. "We keep trying," he said simply. "There are thousands of species in this galaxy. Most of them probably just want the same things everyone wants. Safety, understanding, a chance to exist without being feared or hunted. Humans can help bridge those gaps because we learn to live alongside our predators instead of just running from them." The reporter thanked him and left to file the story. Brent Wilson remained behind, watching the plaza. He thought about that terrible day when alarms screamed and a Voidclaw rampaged through the station. How close they came to killing Ripley out of fear. How one person choosing compassion over panic had altered the course of galactic history. Ryan stood beside him with Ripley at his side. The station hummed with life around them. Ships arrived carrying more humans ready to help, more species requesting understanding instead of isolation, more children learning that monsters were just misunderstood neighbors. The emergency lockdown that day had sealed Orbital Station 47 away from a crisis. But what happened next opened the entire galaxy to possibilities nobody imagined. All because someone chose to pet the beast while others ran in fear. Sometimes the bravest thing was extending your hand to the unknown, and discovering it just needed someone to listen. Ripley rumbled contentedly as Ryan scratched behind its ears, and the galaxy continued changing around them, one patient approach at a time.